Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm a test automation consultant that works with video game studios, and you are a non technical game dev. You might be a lead, you might be an artist, might be QA, might be design or audio, it doesn't really matter. But you're wondering, what is test automation? How does it boost productivity and quality? How does it pay for itself? And how quickly can you tell me about it? So join me for this, not a deep dive, but a shallow dip into the benefits of test automation. But before we can do that, we're going to talk about old bugs. Old bugs are costly in a whole bunch of ways, some obvious, some less so. For instance, they can be slower to fix. If you give a bug to a programmer 6 months after they worked on that feature, it's just going to take them more time to get back into the headspace. That's time you could save if you address the bug sooner. They could be more complicated to fix. A colleague was recently telling me about a game they worked on where a level was designed and fully arted before discovering a serious flaw that required throwing out a whole lot of that expensive art. That problem could have been found sooner and addressed earlier. It can bury other bugs. If level 4 has a crash at the start, you simply don't know how many bugs it might contain. That's a lot of risk to carry around that you can minimize by finding and fixing this crash quickly. There's disruption to others. Every day a bug exists, it causes disruption. For instance, audio designers who wanted to work on level 4 and are now delayed or have to context switch, or artists who have to use a slow workaround because a tool is buggy. Fix bugs sooner and there's less overall disruption. Now, this is a series of molehills that can really quickly add up to a mountain you might not even notice you're standing on. And we haven't even talked about the impact of team morale of all these things. But if you want to judge how your project is doing with old bugs, there's a metric called mean time to resolve, MTTR. And if you're keen to get MTTR as low as it can go, one really effective approach is test automation. But what is test automation? Test automation is code that automatically and accurately verifies behavior. Let's break that down. So code, it's a small program that's going to interrogate the game or some small part of the game, and it's probably written by a programmer. Automatically, which means a build server. If you don't have one of those already, that's something we can help with. But this means you can run your tests at a cadence every day, multiple times a day, on every push. Remember, we're trying to drive down MTTR, so the sooner a test fails when someone commits a bug, the better. Accurately, you don't want flaky or unreliable tests. This is where studios attempting automation sometimes fall down because it's important to focus on from the very beginning. And verifies behavior. This could be player-facing behavior, or it could be internal behavior of particular code systems. So if we're using test automation to catch bugs, what kind of bugs could we be catching? Well, we've already talked about one, level 4 not booting. By fixing this as quickly as possible, we're minimizing disruption to others and uncovering further bugs. We could discover a missing texture on level 6. If an artist just forgot to push a texture, the quicker we can tell them, the more likely they just have that texture sitting in Perforce ready to go. Old saves not being able to be loaded. This can be really tedious to test properly, involving moving files around and lots of repetition. So let's let machines do that tedious work. And if they notice a programmer forgot to handle an edge case, the programmer will still be in the headspace to fix it quickly. At a more of a feature level, we can spot things like bananas not spinning out carts. Now, QA can and will spot this, but who do they assign it to? The banana artist? The cart artist? The physics programmer? By catching it the moment someone pushes a change, it's very easy to identify who should fix it, and we save a whole bunch of back and forthing. Now, all of these are things we could find with QA resources, but by using automation, we're able to find them really fast, which is such an important part of stopping bugs getting old. And it's really important to highlight here, this is not about replacing QA. Every project I've ever implemented automation on, QA has been really pleased afterwards. They no longer have to do monotonous stuff like check every level boots or scour around for missing textures. They can focus on what they're really good at, destructive testing, qualitative feedback, hard to find repo steps. So I hope you can see how automation is helping us catch bugs sooner, helping us keep MTTR really low. And you're going to see all sorts of knock-on benefits from this, including stuff we've already talked about, like less time fixing bugs because people are still in the right headspace. Less disruption because you're driving stability across the whole project. Everyone will always be able to access level 4. And because of that stability, you can do earlier and more frequent playtesting, getting feedback soon enough in the project that you can react to it, driving up the fun of your game. And it will be much less likely that you hear a programmer say it's too risky to fix that at the end of the project because of the support of automation alongside good QA. So take a step back from these benefits, and you can see the first two mean you're going to be saving money or getting more bang for your buck. And that's incredibly important in today's funding environment. And these other two show you that you can drive up the overall quality of your game, not just in terms of bugs, but in terms of player satisfaction. So important in a crowded market where early Steam reviews can sink a promising game. Plus, everyone's just happier. The game is playable. The team is seeing it grow through their work. Momentum breeds momentum. You can really feel people getting into the zone. All through using automation to stop bugs getting old. Okay, great, but who's using it already? You don't want to be using untested methods. So let's talk about two examples. If you've heard of automation before, you might have heard Rare talk about their use of it on Sea of Thieves. They used an approach called feature team automation, where the developer creating a feature is also responsible for creating the tests to go with it. Think about our banana peel Mario Kart test from a few slides ago. These tests tend to be granular, informative and fast tests, which are great qualities for tests to have, but require retraining your staff so they can work with new tools and methods. That's not insurmountable, but let's compare that to RGG. RGG are a Sega studio. They make the Yakuza games, among others. You'll know that Yakuza is a remarkably prolific series, considering how large of a scope each game has. And they can release so often, partly because they use automation, but the approach they use is QA engineering. This involves adding one or more new people to the project whose only role is adding tests. These tests tend to be more high level. Think about our tests looking for missing textures or making sure every level boots. Very useful, but they're a different kind of test to feature team automation. This adds headcount, of course, which depending on your situation might be easier or harder for you than training programmers to do feature team testing. And they work in conjunction with each other. If you can do both, then fantastic, but most teams find it's easier to do one of these first, and there's no right answer about which you choose. Now you might be thinking, of course, these big studios can use it, but what about us? How can we afford to use it? So let's talk costs. These are relatively simple to understand and fall into three categories. You need a build server. Maybe you have one already, but the cost of these tend to be negligible compared to your staffing costs. There's an initial learning curve, either through new training or new processes, but it's a one-time cost, probably a few days, and it's less significant than you might suspect. I'm getting very good at getting teams over this hump now. Finally, and most significantly, there's the cost of actually doing the work. Someone has to write and maintain these tests. That might seem like a big overhead, but in my experience, it's actually not a factor. The biggest reason for this are the gains that you see all over the project in terms of money saved and increased quality. It'll offset any time spent elsewhere creating tests, leaving you with no overall productivity hit. But also there's the fact that you can scale this approach. You don't have to go 100% automating everything. I've seen this used on two-person projects in specific places, as well as in AAA. And if you use a dollop of pragmatic automation in the right place in your game, you'll see benefits far outweighing the implementation costs. So that was your 10-minute shallow dip. I hope you indulge me a small bit of naked advertising now. This is my company. This is what we do every day. When we work with studios, we tend to start with a consultancy where we'll talk to you, understand your risks and your challenges and come up with recommendations for where you could introduce some automation. If you don't have a build system already, or if you do, but you find it taking up the time of your lead programmer or some other gameplay programmer, then we can take that responsibility for you in a fractional way. For training your team, either to start doing QA automation or to start doing feature team automation, we can do multi-day workshops where we talk about the tooling that's available to you, Unreal, Unity, and Godot, they all have inbuilt automation tooling that you can use. There's no extra per seat licensing here. And the best practices that your team should be using to come up with those accurate and reliable tests. We even do a public-facing one-day version of this workshop. So if you check out the website right now, there might be some of those available. If you're interested, maybe you could have a taste of the experience of one of those. And then finally, if you're interested in QA engineering, but you don't want to bring on a whole extra person to your project, or you don't want to have to deal with the hiring of that team, then we can do fractional QA engineering for you as well. You can see more details of all of this on our website, including testimonials of people we've worked with. But to summarize what we were talking about earlier, old bugs are really costly. I hope you agree with that now. And I hope I've shown that automation identifies bugs really quickly, which drives quality and saves you money and means that automation rapidly pays for itself. Thank you very much.